Hello, I am Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute Fellow at the University of California, Irvine, here giving you the summary of the last 24 hours of the Israel-Hamas war. So it's currently the eve of November 4th, 2023 in the United States, and the morning of November 5th, 2023 in the Middle East. Starting with the hostage situation, the kidnapped Israelis that are held in the Gaza Strip. There were little news reports today relating to the hostages themselves. There was a substantial protest that occurred in Israel in which families of the kidnapped Israelis demanded of the government to accept a ceasefire with Hamas in exchange for hostage release. So these are demands of the family members of those who were kidnapped on October 7th, calling upon the government to accept proposals that have been leaked that there might be a ceasefire in exchange for the release of at least some of the hostages that are held by Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. In addition, in meetings today in Jordan, Secretary of State of the United States Anthony Blinken stated that the United States is working with Qatar daily in order to secure the release of more hostages, presumably referring to the same method or mechanism that secured the release of 4 hostages from Hamas over the last couple of weeks. Moving on to the ongoing fighting, there were continuous barrages of rockets and missiles today, as there have been every day, from the Gaza Strip towards the southern parts of Israel and the center of the country. So rockets targeted Ashkelon, Ashdod, and there was direct hit in the town of Sderot in a school. The town of Sderot is largely abandoned since October 7th. There were no injuries reported there. In addition, missiles targeted Gush Dan, Shfela, that was directed in a house in Ness as well as missiles sent towards Rehovot, Bat Yam, and other areas. Importantly, Hamas today took responsibility for firing a long-range missile towards the Arava, stating that the missile was targeting Eilat. This is the most southern city in Israel that has been targeted by missiles from Yemen from the Houthi rebels. So Hamas claimed responsibility for shooting this long-range missile that was intercepted by the IDF by its new Chetz interceptor. Regarding the ground forces of the IDF that are in the north of the Gaza Strip, there was reported today that substantial Shabak, which is the equivalent of the American FBI, activity that is directing the ground forces in the north of the Gaza Strip. It was also reported that the main fighting is centered around the areas of Beit Hanun, the Jabalia refugee camp, as well as the old Netzarim road. In addition, it was reported there are dozens of confrontations each day with Hamas attackers that are emerging from different tunnels, trying to engulf the IDF from different directions, and that the IDF is continuing to gradually continue its encirclement and move closer and closer into the center of Gaza City, specifically focusing on the Shifa hospital, where it was reported that all of the Hamas underground central command is located. In addition, the United States today suggested that the next phase of Israel's ground invasion will likely commence soon, and this will likely involve a lot less bombardments from the air, as the IDF relies more and more on its ground forces moving into Gaza City. Al Miadin today reported that the IDF bombed out Ismail Haniya's home. Ismail Haniya is the leader of Hamas, who is in Qatar. He has a house in Shati refugee camp, among other several houses in the Gaza Strip. It was reportedly bombed out today. Regarding casualties, the IDF reported today that 4 of its soldiers had been killed in the last 24 hours. The Palestinians reported that the IDF attacked a UN school, Al-Fahura school in Jabalia refugee camp that were housing displaced people, and 15 people were killed. In addition, it was reported in an IDF attack in the Mazi refugee camp in central Gaza Strip. 30 people were killed. In total, since the war began, the Palestinian Health Ministry is reporting almost 9,500 Palestinians have been killed, and in addition, the 2,200 are still missing under the rubble, and large numbers of these are likely deceased as well. Moving on to the humanitarian situation. It was reported yesterday that the IDF has opened a new humanitarian corridor for Gazans from the north to continue evacuating south through the Salahadin highway. So after the IDF called on Gazans from the north to continuously move down south, and there are reports of between 800,000 and 1 million of them did in fact evacuate down south. That corridor had been closed now for about a week. The IDF reopened it again yesterday. According to reports, the IDF forces that were opening the siege that they have and allowing Gazans to move down south was attacked by Hamas using anti-tank missiles and mortar fires. Reportedly, according to the IDF, this was so that the IDF would not allow Gazans to flee. However, the IDF reported that it is going to be open again today. The United Nations is reporting that 30,000 Palestinians that had already fled down south had actually returned to the north after they felt that down south was not as safe. Meanwhile, it is reported that between 350,000 and 400,000 Palestinians remain in the north of the Gaza Strip. The Egyptian health minister today stated that Egypt is receiving between 40 to 50 injured Palestinians from Gaza every day. This relates to a deal that was struck several days ago to allow injured Palestinians, after the lists are vetted by the IDF, to evacuate to Egypt. Amidst this, NBC today reported that 6,000 Palestinians with foreign citizenship are being held up these are Palestinians who were going to be allowed to leave the Gaza Strip through the Rafah crossing. However, it was reported they're being held up because Hamas is insisting that its own injured people be allowed to leave as well. This report was later confirmed by the German DPA news agency, which quoted Egyptian sources saying that Hamas is stopping a substantial amount of Palestinians from leaving the Gaza Strip, conditional upon allowing its own injured fighters to evacuate as well. In addition, the U.S. Special Envoy for Humanitarian Issues today stated that there has been an agreed-upon mechanism to allow fuel to enter the Gaza once it runs out, and he added that the U.S. has not seen cases of Hamas attempting to steal humanitarian aid. This relates to the ongoing fuel crisis in the Gaza Strip. Electricity in the Gaza Strip has been completely cut off. All the hospitals are operating on generators. There's been a constant push and pull with the United States trying to pressure Israel to allow fuel in. Israel said it is not going to allow fuel in. However, I stated already a few days ago that there are already cracks in this, and the chief of staff in Israel has said that they will allow fuel in. Now the U.S. Special Envoy to Humanitarian Issues is saying there is a mechanism to allow fuel in. Likely this is going to continue to mount pressure, and they will come up with some mechanism in the coming days. 30 trucks carrying food, water, and medical supplies entered the Gaza Strip today. This number is substantially lower than the expected 100 trucks a day. There was no report given as to why that number was lower today, possibly because it was the weekend or because of this continuous confrontation around Rafah crossing. Unclear. It was reported today that in the United States, 58 Democratic Congress members and senators appealed to Secretary of State Blinken, who is currently visiting the Middle East, to pressure Israel to create a humanitarian respite. So not to agree to a ceasefire, but just to agree to halt the fire in order to allow humanitarian evacuations, people coming out of the rubble, and the entrance of humanitarian aid. Possibly related to this, Blinken today stated in a meeting with Netanyahu that public opinion favoring Israel is gradually weakening, pressuring a humanitarian respite and saying that this will help the United States to defend Israel on the long term. Netanyahu in turn stated that they will only respond and agree to a humanitarian respite in exchange for hostage release. Moving on to the West Bank, Palestinians today carried out an attack against an IDF outpost near the Nebi Alias village. No IDF soldiers were injured. In addition, 15 Palestinians were arrested throughout the West Bank. 4 of these are reported to be Hamas members. Throughout these arrests, there were several riots reported and several Palestinians injured in confrontations with the IDF. Moving on to the north of Israel and southern Lebanon, there were continuous rocket attacks today. Mortar fire and anti-tank missiles were fired by Hezbollah against different IDF outposts and throughout the Galilee. In addition, importantly, following Hassan Nasrallah's speech yesterday, Hezbollah today fired 2 heavy rockets at IDF outposts for the first time since the war began. So these are rockets known as the Burstein rockets. They are capable of carrying between 200 and 500 kilos of explosives each, and this may be indicating a small escalation as part of on behalf of Hezbollah. It remains to be seen. The IDF, in retaliation, attacked several different Hezbollah outposts and infrastructures, including warehouses and different Hezbollah targets. There were reports that the retaliations today were larger than in previous days. In addition, Nabil Kaouk, who is a member of Hezbollah's Central Committee, stated today that Hezbollah's actions in southern Lebanon are wearing down the IDF, adding, and I quote, "No matter how many aircraft carriers and destroyers arrive, we will not let Gaza down." So this is a direct response to the United States is continuing to sending more and more troops in and the 2 aircraft carriers, but this is also continuing Hassan Nasrallah's speech from yesterday and stating that that Hezbollah is in fact doing its part to weaken the IDF and sort of saying, don't come to Hezbollah to demand anything more. Relating to some regional developments, it was reported today in Asharaq al-Awsat that Iran has declared the Deir al-Azur region in Syria a closed military zone, so this means that civilians have been forced to evacuate from the area, and then militias from Iraq that are loyal to Iran are bringing fighters into the region as part of preparations for possible escalations and widening the war. So again, this is right now all speculation regarding what is the meaning behind this, but the report is that Iran is considering opening another front in Syria for possible escalations or even full-on confrontation with Israel. Remains to be seen. Regarding some of the political developments and general trends, the Canadian Prime Minister today stated that he spoke with Netanyahu and that Israel has the right to defend itself according to humanitarian law. So again, this was emphasized again and again in recent discussions between different military leaders and the Israeli leadership. In addition, the president of Ukraine today, Volodymyr Zelensky, stated that shifting the West's focus from Ukraine to the Middle East is part of Russian strategy. So this relates to the increasing involvement of Russia in possibly supporting Hamas, or at least in condemning Israel in various different ways. According to Zelensky, this is part of a strategy in order to divert attention from Ukraine. Turkey today recalled its ambassador from Israel, stating that this is being done as a result of, quote, the humanitarian tragedy in the Gaza Strip. Since the war began, the president of Turkey, Erdogan, has been one of the most vocal critics of Israel, has accused Israel of anything from genocide to war crimes to crimes against humanity, and now Turkey has finally recalled its ambassador from Israel. Prime Minister of Lebanon today, Najib Mikati, met with Anthony Blinken in Jordan. Anthony Blinken is in Jordan as part of what is going to be a regional conference, either today or tomorrow. In addition, the Arab Parliament, which includes foreign ministers from Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Egypt, all appealed to the UN Human Rights Council and demanded the opening of an investigation against Israel for its actions in the Gaza Strip. Importantly, after reported for several days, there's been debate within Israel regarding funds that Israel is due to transfer to the Palestinian Authority, and that Israel was refusing to transfer the funds, and then the United States was pressuring the transfer of the funds, and then Israel agreed to transfer the funds. Now it was reported today that the Palestinian Authority might refuse to accept the funds from Israel due to the fact that Israel is subtracting the Gaza funds from this. However, it was also reported that discussions within the Palestinian Authority are going to continue. It is very likely that the Palestinian Authority is going to find a way to accept these funds because it really depends on them for its budget and for maintaining its security in the West Bank. Moving on to some of the speculation regarding the future of the Gaza Strip. It was reported today in Reuters that Hamas has planned for months of survival in the tunnels, so in preparations for the attack, Hamas has planned to bury itself in the tunnels of the Gaza Strip for months of a confrontation, and their plan is to continuously challenge the IDF's takeover, hoping that the longer they manage to wear down the IDF in a war of attrition, the more pressure will be mounted on Israel to accept a ceasefire, negotiate with Hamas, and release Palestinian prisoners. Sources that are close to the Hamas leadership, according to Reuters, stated that they have sent messages to the United States and Israel that Hamas would like to release hostages in exchange for prisoners, and more broadly that Hamas would like to remove the siege of the Gaza Strip completely as part of some future vision of the Gaza Strip. In addition to that, it was reported today that Israel finance minister and member of the expanded cabinet, Bezalel Smotrich, who is the head of the religious Zionism party in Israel, today explicitly stated that Israel will control the Gaza Strip after the war is over, and he added, and I quote, "The most important thing is that the Strip will not have Hamas and will be operationally controlled by the IDF for years. We will not destroy Hamas and import another body to return to a misconception." What Smotrich is referring to is the ongoing debate within Israel, where some parties are saying the Palestinian Authority should be restored in the Gaza Strip. Smotrich belongs to a far more hawkish camp that says the Palestinian Authority is just as bad, if not worse, than Hamas, and he is saying that Israel should continue to control the Gaza Strip. It is also noteworthy that Smotrich's party has called in the past for Israel to reoccupy the Gaza Strip and reestablish its settlement activity there that was evacuated in 2005. That is my report for the last 24 hours. I'll be back tomorrow.